Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're pulling the stack of sources on what is, without a doubt, the most high-stakes system in your vehicle.
Your brakes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Your brakes. It's the absolute first line of defense when every second and, every foot of distance really counts.
that's right. And our mission for you today is to go way beyond just, knowing where the pedal is. We want you to really understand the engineering behind it, the techniques, and maybe most importantly, the warning signs.
This is about building that confidence, knowing what a subtle vibration means, or exactly how to react in an emergency.
Exactly. So we're going to cover everything from defensive driving to the nitty-gritty of hydraulic systems and what those strange noises are trying to tell you.
Okay, fantastic. Let's unpack this. And let's start not with the car itself, but with the person behind the wheel, with anticipation.
Stopping safely is really a two-part equation. And the first part is all human. We call it thinking distance.
Thinking distance.
Yeah, that's the distance your car travels and the time it takes for your brain to see a hazard, decide to act, and then actually move your foot over to the brake pedal.
So that's the driver's inertia, not the car's. How do we shorten that? How do we make ourselves react faster?
Well, a lot of it is about proactive driving. We always talk about the 3-second rule for following distance, which is your basic buffer.
Right, the foundation.
But there's also a great technique called covering the brake.
So just hovering your foot over it.
Exactly. If you see brake lights way ahead, or you're coming up on a stale green light, just moving your foot over the pedal shaves critical tenths of a second off your reaction time.
It's like preparing your muscles for the action.
Okay.
Okay, but once the foot actually goes down, we're into the world of physics.
Right. And we know that total stopping distance is your thinking time plus the physical braking time.
So what's the biggest variable in that physical part of the equation?
It's speed.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is where the physics gets a little humbling.
How so?
Well, the vehicle's weight has a pretty linear effect. Double the weight, you roughly double the stopping distance.
Okay, that makes sense.
But speed is exponential.
Exponential.
So if you double your speed, say from 40 miles an hour to 80, your stopping distance doesn't just double, it roughly quadruples.
Wow. Quadruples.
Yeah.
That completely changes how you should think about following someone on the highway.
It absolutely should. And that's why the goal is always smooth, controlled inputs. You're trying to manage that exponential risk.
Which I think brings us perfectly to the actual mechanics of your foot on the pedal.
Exactly.
So we know it has to be the right foot only to avoid hitting both pedals at once. But let's get really specific about the best way to place your foot.
Okay, so the two key words here are stability and modulation. First, you want your heel anchored firmly on the floor.
As a pivot point.
Precisely.
Mhm.
If your whole leg is just floating in the air, you lose all that fine motor control. Then, you place the ball of your foot right on the center of the pedal.
Why the ball and not, say, your toes? I feel like you'd get more leverage with your toes.
You do get more leverage, but you get almost no sensitivity. Using your toes encourages jabbing at the pedal. The ball of your foot lets you gently roll on the pressure to modulate it.
Which gives you that smooth stop we were just talking about.
And of course, this is why you really can't drive safely in like flip-flops or heavy work boots. They just kill that tactile feedback.
Right. Okay, so we're positioned correctly.
Yeah.
But driving isn't static. What about hard braking? We're always told to avoid it.
Yeah, and that's about two things: longevity and control. A sudden stop generates a massive spike of heat, which wears out your pads and rotors way faster. And of course, it dramatically increases your risk of skidding.
So anticipate, anticipate, anticipate.
Always. And that goes double when conditions are bad. In rain or snow, your grip is compromised, so you have to brake earlier and gentler.
And there's that golden rule about braking in a straight line, right?
It's a non-negotiable rule. When you brake hard in a turn, you shift the car's weight in a really unstable way. It's one of the easiest ways to start a slide. So brake, then turn.
Let's talk about some other techniques to manage all that energy and heat. I'm thinking about engine braking.
Ah, yes. Engine braking is a fantastic tool, especially on a long downhill road.
So that's just letting off the gas and downshifting.
Exactly. You're using the engine's own internal resistance to help slow the car down, which takes a huge load off your friction brakes. It keeps them cool and prevents a really dangerous condition called brake fade.
Okay, let's get into emergency situations. A lot of us were taught to pump the brakes if we started to skid.
Right. That technique is called cadence braking. And for older cars without anti-lock brakes, it was absolutely the right thing to do. That rhythmic pumping was the only way to stop the wheels from locking up solid.
Which would let you keep some steering control.
Some steering control, exactly. But if your car has ABS, that rule gets flipped on its head.
So in a modern car, what's the procedure in a panic stop?
You do the exact opposite. You never, ever pump the brakes.
Never.
The ABS system is designed to pulse the brakes for you, hundreds of times per second, way faster than your foot ever could. So your job is to apply firm, continuous, steady pressure.
Just stand on it and hold it.
Stand on it, hold it, and steer. Let the computer sort out the traction.
This is a perfect transition into the hardware. Let's look at the mechanical systems themselves. We basically got two types, disc and drum.
Correct. And disc brakes are pretty much the standard now, mainly because they're so much better at managing heat.
And they work with pads, squeezing a spinning rotor, right?
Yep. The whole assembly is out in the open, so air is constantly flowing over it, carrying heat away.
And getting rid of that heat is the whole game. Why is that so important?
Because heat is the enemy of friction. The cooler your brakes stay, the more consistently they perform, stop after stop. Disc brakes are also way better in the rain because the spinning rotor just flings the water right off.
Okay, and drum brakes.
Drum brakes are a bit older tech. They use brake shoes that push outwards against the inside of a metal drum. They're cheaper, which is why you still see them on the rear wheels of some economy cars.
And for parking brakes, usually.
Almost always for parking brakes. Now, backing up that hardware are the high-tech systems. We've already mentioned ABS.
Which uses speed sensors at each wheel and a little computer to figure out if a wheel is about to lock.
Right, and its main job is to let you steer during a panic stop. But here's an interesting little caveat our sources point out.
Oh,
ABS isn't always the absolute shortest way to stop.
really?
On loose surfaces like deep gravel or snow, a locked-up tire will actually pile up a little wedge of that material in front of it.
Like a little snowplow.
Exactly. And that little wedge helps you stop faster. ABS prevents that from happening, so in those very specific conditions, you might actually stop a few feet shorter without it.
That's a fascinating detail for anyone driving in rural areas. Okay, what about the system in EVs and hybrids? Regenerative brakes.
Regenerative braking is just brilliant engineering. When you lift off the accelerator, the electric motor essentially runs in reverse.
It becomes a generator.
It becomes a generator. It
Yeah.
uses the car's own momentum to create electricity and send it back to the battery.
So you're recapturing energy that would normally be lost as heat.
And the huge side benefit is you're barely using your regular friction brakes in daily driving. They can last for ages.
Then there's the final safety net, emergency brake assist.
Or EBA. The car's computer measures how fast you move your foot to the brake pedal. If it senses a panic movement, but you haven't pressed hard enough.
Which I guess happens a lot in a real emergency.
It's very common. So the system says, I know what you meant to do, and it automatically applies maximum braking force for you.
Incredible. But all these amazing systems depend on one thing that people almost always forget about.
Ah, yes. The humble brake fluid.
Which brings us nicely to troubleshooting.
Right. Brake fluid is the lifeblood. It's the incompressible fluid that transmits force from your foot to the wheels. But, and this is the key, most types DOT 3 and 4 are hygroscopic.
Meaning they absorb water.
They actively suck moisture right out of the atmosphere.
And why is water in your brake lines a recipe for disaster?
While water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, right? Your brake fluid is designed to boil at a much, much higher temperature. As it absorbs water, that boiling point plummets.
So if you're braking hard, going down a mountain.
You generate a lot of heat. That water-laden fluid can boil, creating steam bubbles in your brake lines.
And steam, unlike fluid, is compressible.
You got it. So you press the pedal, and all you're doing is squishing bubbles. Nothing happens. That's called vapor lock.
And the pedal just goes straight to the floor. Terrifying.
It's the reason why you have to change your brake fluid. The recommendation is usually every 2 to 3 years, no matter how many miles you've driven.
Okay, let's talk about how fluid problems feel through the pedal. First, a soft or spongy pedal. What's going on there?
A spongy feel is almost always a sign of air in the lines. The system needs to be bled. Or it could be low fluid from a leak, or even old rubber hoses that are starting to bulge under pressure.
And the opposite. What if the pedal feels super hard to press?
A rock-hard pedal usually means you've lost your power assist.
The brake booster.
The brake booster, yeah. Most cars use engine vacuum to help you press the pedal. If that booster fails, or there's a vacuum leak, you have to supply all the force yourself.
Which is why your brakes still work if the engine dies. but you have to stand on them with all your might.
That's it exactly.
Okay, let's move from feel to sound and vibration. What about that violent pulsation you feel on the pedal sometimes? Everyone just says warped rotors.
Right, that's the common diagnosis.
Yeah.
And overheating is the root cause, but our sources show that the rotor isn't usually physically warped or bent.
So it's actually happening.
It's something called rotor thickness variation, or DTV. The intense heat causes an uneven transfer of brake pad material onto the rotor's surface, so you end up with these tiny high spots.
Ah, so the rotor isn't bent, it's just lumpy.
It's lumpy on a microscopic level, and that's the pulsation you feel as the pads grab and release over those high spots.
That is a much better explanation. Finally, let's touch on that most dangerous heat issue, brake fade.
Brake fade is terrifying. It's when your brakes get so hot that the pad material just stops creating friction effectively.
So the pedal feels soft and goes down further, but the car just isn't slowing down.
And you often get a very distinct burning smell with it. It's a temporary but total loss of braking power. It's what engine braking is specifically designed to prevent.
Okay, so if the worst happens, total brake failure, what is the protocol?
First thing, above all else, stay calm. Panicking is the worst possible response. Then, immediately warn others, hazard lights on, hit the horn.
Clear a path for yourself. What's step 2 for slowing down?
Immediately use engine braking. Shift down to a lower gear L or 2, or just downshift your manual and let the engine's resistance start scrubbing off speed.
While you're doing that, what are you doing with the brake pedal?
If you have regular brakes, pump the pedal like crazy. You're trying to build up any little bit of pressure left in the system. If you have ABS, just apply firm, steady pressure and hope for the best.
Then we have the emergency brake.
Emergency brake, right. The key here is to be gentle. You have to pull the handle or press the pedal slowly and progressively.
Because if you just yank it on,
You'll lock the rear wheels instantly and send the car into an uncontrollable spin. So ease it on to bleed off speed.
and if none of that is working, last resort.
Look for something to help you. An uphill slope is your best friend, a grassy shoulder, a gravel runoff. If you have to hit something, try to make it a glancing blow along a guardrail to scrub speed rather than a head-on impact.
So important to have that muscle memory. Finally, the dashboard lights. The scary red brake warning light. What does that mean?
Red means there's a serious hydraulic problem. Pull over safely and stop driving immediately. It could be low fluid, a major pressure loss, your brakes are compromised.
And the less scary, but still important, yellow or amber ABS light.
The amber light means the ABS system itself has a fault. Your normal brakes should still work just fine, but you've lost that anti-lock safety net. So drive carefully and get it checked out as soon as you can.
That was an incredible deep dive.
Yeah.
So to wrap it all up, it seems like the key is smooth driving, regular inspections, and not forgetting to change your brake fluid.
Absolutely. When you understand the system, you can be proactive about safety instead of just reactive in a crisis. You're not just stopping, you're stopping smart.
And we'll leave you with a final provocative thought. We talked a lot about heat and friction. So think about the material your brake pads are made of, whether that's a quiet ceramic or a high-performance semi-metallic pad.
A semi-metallic pad is designed to work best when it's really hot, when it can really bite into the rotor.
So how do you think that aggressive high-heat pad is going to perform? And more importantly, how is it going to sound during your quiet, cold morning commute compared to a softer ceramic pad designed for comfort?
It's that trade-off between ultimate performance and daily livability that you have to think about when you choose your parts.
Something to think about. Until our next deep dive, drive safely. And thanks for being with us.
Please like, subscribe, and get notified.